overseeing a civilian government. I don't think anyone believes that interim President Ben Salah, who's not been looking well, and the Prime Minister Nourdin Bedoui are substantial political players that are going to carry the system along.
So the elections that were going to happen in December,
now,
and
12th,
the constitutional reforms that were going to precede those elections, where are we with that? And would you bet your own modest fortune on there being elections in Algeria in December?
Well, the authorities have said the elections are going to go ahead. There's a motley crew of, am I right, at last time I looked, it was about 135 candidates have presented themselves, but they then have to be interviewed and checked through. Some of the likely contenders in a sort of deal that might bring, sort of Sudanese deal that might bring the military together with the protesters and have a government of transition, have already said that they won't contest, and the Hirak members of, leaders of, those that haven't been arrested in recent weeks, are all saying, no, we need a more transitional moment to put a new constitution together, and to have a presidential election on December the 12th doesn't make any sense.
So your bet would be on an elongated process, an elongated transition. It's more likely to happen.
Well, I think the two sides want completely different things.
Yeah.
Because the establishment is going to want to keep the rump of the system. There may be tinkering, there may be changes, but they're going to be looking to maintain control, whereas the Hirak is looking for a very structural change. And that's enormous. Its members are divided. I mean, there isn't the big problem at the moment is there isn't a Hirak party.
Can we just nip across the border? I know we've got a few minutes left. Just can we nip across the border to another of your favourite countries?
Absolutely.
Morocco.
Yes.
This week we've just seen the government reshuffle, which is, shall we say, less than overwhelming. Could you explain what's been going on there and what difference it's going to make?
I think in Morocco, from around 2016, 2017, the king, who had been genuinely withdrawing from politics or direct government, and I think actually wanted to, grew very frustrated with the lack of speed on certain important dossiers that the government had, which was, of course, led by the PJD, the Islamist party, which had come first in elections, then led by the, I think, genuinely charismatic Abdelilah Ben Kiran, and Ben Kiran was forced out and replaced by Saladin El-Othmani, who is a genial man, but I think many people would say is not the most dynamic or assertive of leaders. During that period, the palace has taken, again, a much more leading role, and it wants a much more modernising. It wants changes to issues, gender balance, generational balance. It wants a government that's effective. And I think one thing that everyone agrees is that there are real strengths within the Moroccan economy. The Africa Report has written very well, from what I can see, on Tanger Med, the container port with the car factories and whatever, the modern side of Morocco. But there are huge, huge problems in this country that has far fewer natural resources than its neighbours, which has a functioning economy, a vibrant business community, but the fact is there are a lot of people who are not being well served, and particularly there are a lot of people, many of whom do vote for the PJD but vote for all other parties, who can't afford the private medicine and the private education that many of the circles you move in Casablanca have, and they're suffering from what is clearly a failing health service, failing education, and they want change. And if there is a consensus, there's a consensus of the people behind the king, who's actually argued this and has shown his frustrations, the royal outrages, as they called them, the colère royale, over these things, and those have struck a chord. Now, the problem is how to enact this, and you have a government. The new government that's come in is really, it's not a huge change from what's gone before.
Finance Minister stays the same.
Well, Ben Shaboun came in a relatively recent change, and has been seen to have done a very good job. So to some degree, he's part of an inward wave, and a lot of those people. But you see a lot of the ministers. You've got the head of the RNI party, Aziz Akhnouch, stays at agriculture and's been at some stages, talked of as next prime minister coming from the liberal side. He, of course, has a huge business fortune. You've got the industry minister, of course, also a huge business fortune, and you've got modernisers. The new minister of foreign affairs is a 40-something, highly qualified international financier, female, as are some of the other new ministers. That's where the fresh blood is. But at the same time, there were some very Moroccan wranglings around the political parties, who was going to stand. Because really what people are looking for is the constellation. What is going to happen going ahead with elections? And you are in a situation where the PJD has not got a sweeping majority, but it's likely to have enough still to be the first party, and whoever has the first party names the Prime Minister.
So that takes us to another neighbour, Tunisia, where the Islamist Party has just scored a victory. It's the biggest party after the legislative elections, and its nominee, its candidate, has just won the presidency. Before you rush out of the door, Jon, can you just give us your reaction to that and what that means for Tunisia's political direction?
Well, I think there's two interesting things. Clearly it was noted that the new president, Kais Saied, is an academic. He comes from the Islamist tradition. He's best known for speaking well on moral and social issues on the television as a talking head. And the man he beat, of course, Nabil Karoui, in prison, media magnate, the Tunisian Berlusconi. So we were talking in both cases that the candidates of the conventional parties, and Ennahda, the Islamist party, for once did put up a candidate in Abdel Fattah Mourou, didn't win.
But then moved its support behind the eventual win.
I think that the Ennahda leader, Rashid Ghannouchi, had, unlike being a supple political player, unlike so many in the region, had a plan A, a plan B, and a plan C. And the Ennahda support undoubtedly helped Kais Saied. But the other issue that's really the most important is that for some time, political analysts in Tunisia and abroad have been saying, for this series of elections coming up, it's going to be the parliament that's the most important. I mean, there's still a lot of problems around the Tunisian constitution, but there's been a view developing that actually there would be more and more a parliamentary-led issue. And indeed, what's most interesting in the parliamentary elections they had in early October, Ennahda, as expected, finished first. And Rashid Ghannouchi, its leader, stood for the first time ever in an election as number one on the Central Tunis list. And so we're likely to see a situation where he's actually the Speaker of Parliament, and it's a Parliament that will be more assertive. But again, Tunisia is split into many factions. It has profound problems. We could spend hours talking about the ramifications of the individuals involved.
Let's keep that for another time.
Keep it for another time. But the key message again is Tunisians want a degree of stability, and they want what has been an economy that has certainly, has its marginalised areas of the country, where people haven't had the incomes that they feel they deserve, where there was a strong professional middle class which has really been squeezed, where services functioned very well. Tunisia has a pretty good record. And people want to see those working, and they want to see their politicians delivering. And so even in what was democratically the most efficient of the post-2011 political processes, what it hasn't done is deliver for the people what they're expecting, and that is the key question.
That's all for this week. Our thanks to Jon Marks. If you enjoyed the programme, why not give us a review? It helps others find the show. For a free daily briefing from us, do go to our website and sign up to our newsletter. You can find it at theafricareport.com. Thanks for listening.